Hello, everyone. My name is Stanley St. Rose, and today we're going to be talking about the case for reparations by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Now, before I go into the summary and analysis of this work, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and/or comment so that the channel can continue to grow. So this work here, the case of for reparations, is very interesting work by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Um, Basically, after the civil rights era, during the Jim Crow era, there's a lot of things happening in the country, down south, in the north, different places in the country. There were laws that were being set in place that oppressed black people. What Ta-Nehisi Coates is saying here within this work is that racism, systematic racism, it's not just white people not liking black people. There are there is a structure to the racism. Okay, it's not just I don't like you, you're black. All right, there's a structure to the racism. Especially within this work, Ta-Nehisi Coates talks about redlining. Redlining is, banks and the government, they were not helping black people buy homes. In the United States, the way you make wealth is by buying property, starting businesses. So you need loans, you need land, you need property to start businesses and build generational wealth. You cannot build generational wealth by working $15 an hour or the minimum wage. You cannot do that. You cannot build generational wealth by having a salaried work. A lawyer who earns a specific income every year, year in and year out, doesn't invest, doesn't have a business, will just earn and spend. So you can be in a high career, but because you're not expanding the ways that you make money and your investments and things like that, you're just stagnant. You earn a high wage, but you're just stagnant. I mean, you can still live a good life, but you're still stagnant. When you can buy homes, you can, then you can sell that home. You could use the money to create a business. You can use that money to buy more homes, to buy more land, to start other businesses, go into investments. So as long as you have capital, there's lots of things you can do. But during the Jim Crow era, during the Reconstruction era, during the redlining era, black people, you just didn't have that opportunity because banks were not helping you. The loans are not fair. The neighborhoods that you can buy homes, pretty much, you had to use other means, not a conventional mortgage and things like that. So some black people had to go in through contracts to buy homes, and you weren't protected by the government. You weren't protected by the banks. You weren't protected by the law. So pretty much, if you miss a payment, if you made any mistakes, they could just pretty much take your home, take your property, and you have no equity. You have nothing like that, and you lose everything, and then you're back to square one. So black people could not build generational wealth because there's just so many ways that the banks, the government, lawyers, cities could pretty much cheat you out of your hard work. So you work hard, you work that $15 job, you work that salary job if you could get something like that at that time period, and you try to pay off your house, but it's maybe like you're halfway of paying off your house, but then you miss a payment or something goes wrong and you lose everything. And now maybe you're much older or maybe you're close to retirement and you have nothing. So Ta-Nehisi Coates is saying within this work that it was the oppression was real. It was coming from all sides. You were living in a society where the dominant culture, the white culture, didn't like you. The banks didn't like you. The government didn't like you. The jobs didn't like you. Nobody liked you. So there was a structure to your oppression. You were being squeezed from every side. Economically, socially, from every side. So Ta-Nehisi Coates really makes a really important argument here within this work. Because, like most people, when they say, when they talk about racism and they talk about things like that, they just talk about, white people that don't like black people. It's much deeper than that. There's a structure to society and to capital and access to money and loans that held black people back. Now, redlining is illegal now, but I mean, the damages can still be felt throughout several neighborhoods. in America today. I mean, a lot of people left the South and moved to Chicago and moved to other cities where they thought that they could get better opportunities. But there's a big population of black people in Chicago now today, but they're still living in poverty because their ancestors, their grandfathers, grandmothers, people in their family in the past, they couldn't build generational wealth and they couldn't establish their families because you were being oppressed in many different types of ways because you couldn't get loans to build your own businesses. You couldn't get loans to buy your own house. You had to, fight governments and cities because they were just excluding you. You were not getting a way to get access to capital, to get access to money. And the way that American society works, the way that you build wealth is by buying in. You take on debt, you borrow money to start a business, to have funds to start a business. I mean, you may want to start like a sandwich shop or something, and maybe then build that into a chain or a franchise, but you couldn't because you couldn't get the loans that you needed, and society was just against you in every which way. So Ta-Nehisi Coates with this article really, starts the ball rolling here with thinking of how racism was not just, people hating people, but there was a very strong structure to it where even if you moved from state to state, there were laws, there were things that kept you from upward mobility. So it's very fascinating the way that he shows us this within this work. So, the contracts that black people had to use to buy homes, very dangerous because you could lose everything. You could lose your equity. You could miss a payment and lose your home and things like that. Redlining was bad. Banks wouldn't give you money. The place where you could buy homes, maybe they weren't valuable or they just were not as valued. And the government at the same time was funding white expansion, white individuals buying homes and building generational wealth. Because, let's say you buy a home for $250,000, and then when you're going to retire, you sell the home and then you give your kid all that money, and that kid takes that money, takes some of it, puts a down payment on another house, buys a house for himself, herself, whatever, and then take the rest of that money and starts a business, or takes the rest of that money, puts it into a retirement fund or the stock market. Or again, if you have like $200,000, you have $300,000. There's lots of things you can do to build more wealth for yourself. So the middle class, they were able to, maybe if they had grandfathers and grandmothers that could think, just buy a small purchase of a home today, and then maybe you sell that home off, you get that money. There's other things you can do to establish your kids, and your kids can have more opportunities to go to college, go to school, start businesses, buy more land, and create capital and create generational wealth. And black people didn't have that ability. So um, that's why there's a case for reparations, because yes, there's laws today protecting, you can't do redlining anymore, and there's laws today protecting black people and making it fair for everybody, but still, the damage is already done. Because, I mean, in a lot of black neighborhoods today, nobody wants to buy houses in those neighborhoods because a lot of them are unsafe. I mean, you can buy a house. If you're black, you can buy a house wherever you want if you have the money. But for the generations of black people that already lived through it, I mean, the damage is already done. So again, in terms of deeper meaning analysis, this is a really interesting work because it really shows you the structure of racism. That it wasn't just white people hating black people. There's just after the Civil War, during the Jim Crow era, during the Reconstruction era, it was the banks, it was the laws, it was the cities, the states, Congress. There are different laws and different um, structures being put in place that kept black people from building wealth, um, and accessing capital, accessing funds to not just be hourly or salaried workers. And this continues to this day because, well, you still need access to funding, and if you just are coming from nothing, it's really hard to get a bank to trust you with large amounts of funds, because banks don't just give you money and say go away. They ask for proof of salary. They ask you for, you have to show them. You have to show them some evidence that you can borrow a loan and pay them back, and you have to prove to them that you're a good investment. And if you're coming from a background where you have no money and you have nothing to prove your ability to make money or any evidence of money at all, there's no way they're going to give you funds, capital, things like that to build generational wealth. So yeah, that's all I have to say about this work. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Device lock.